Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another exciting round of epic racing action in the one and only the Sim Racing Collective GT4 Series Season 3 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. That's right, we've roared our way into the second half of the season today, and after an incredible round of racing that saw the conclusion of the first half of the Virginia International Raceway only a week ago, we don't take a breath and our drivers are showing no signs of slowing down as they've made the way all the way from the US of A to Belgium for arguably the country's second favourite circuit. Overshadowed by the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, our drivers will be taking on Circuit Zolder today, and what a circuit they've got in store for them. Located in the region of Zolder in the Limburg region of Belgium, it is a circuit which spans 2.4 miles in length and only has the best part of 10 corners. But the majority of those corners are a combination of sweepers and chicanes, with the opening half a lap dominated by sweepers and the latter half a lap dominated by chicanes, and it all begins at the middle point of the circuit where they do have the Kleiner chicane. It is a circuit which requires our drivers to be bold, brave and decisive when it comes to overtakes, but also it does require a very good qualifying lap because overtaking around here is not easy in the dry, let alone when you consider wet conditions, of which we have had some rain here, and that could serve to shake things up monumentally as the drivers make their way into this round, knowing that the championship standings, whether it being pro or am, continue to ebb or flow. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast of Circuit Side as you tune in tonight on the YouTube channel, the one and only place you can catch all the racing action, I should add, and that is the YouTube channel of the Sim Racing Collective. Go on YouTube and search for TSRC or the Sim Racing Collective, and you can be tuning in there and join the likes of many on a weekly basis. And welcome to you guys and girls tuning in tonight, as we do say hello there to DQ Dave, or Disqualification Dave, who is cheering on Jack Southwood there. And I hope you're doing well, Dave, and are all set for the brilliant racing tonight. Indeed, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi, ladies and gentlemen, if you are tuning in right now. And let us know how you're doing on this very first day of December. That's right, it is the 1st of December. It's crazy to think we're in month 12 of 2025. Where has that year gone? Well, it's gone to the past. But I'll tell you one thing, as our drivers make their way through these rounds, and the rounds get accrued, they're going to be entering their way into the history books come the end of the season as our Season 3 champions. But in this round, in terms of our schedule, we've made our way back to the feature race format. After experimenting with our new sprint race format as a round number 3, you'll see that again in round number 5 in a week's time when we head to Sonoma. But here today at the Circuit Zolder, we are going back to our standard 40-minute race, and that is due to get underway at 8:15 this evening in UK times. UK time zone, of course, being GMT, that's Greenwich Mean Time, or Universal Coordinate Time, UTC. But prior to the race, we do have our 10-minute qualifying session, which is due to get underway in approximately 3 minutes' time at 8:05 this evening. In the content booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX121 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I shall be bringing you all your racing action as it unfolds over the entirety of the season. But as we make our way then into this round, let's recap the season so far and what is lying in wait. And as we can see, we have made our way into the second half, because in round number 3 on the 24th of November, we saw our drivers take on the full out of the Virginia International Raceway, and what a round of racing it was. Well, we got to see in both races some absolutely titanic fights at the front of the field, and overall and in pro, the victories in the end were shared between Francesco Petelin and Tom Davidson, with the two drivers battling each other hard, with Petelin coming away with the victory in race number 1, but Davidson in the end being able to put the pressure on Petelin and forcing him to concede, and it was Davidson who took the victory in race number 2, but they really were the standout stars at the front of the field, and they dominated the headlines. Whereas in the AM class, there was only one name that stood at the very top in both races. It was Valerio Petretti, taking his first 2 wins of the season back-to-back, albeit the narrative was one where the qualifying session was dominated not by Petretti, but instead by Martin Rendell, who after an absolutely miserable start to his race number 1, gave way to Petretti, and then the rest was history for the Italian job driver in securing an absolutely monumentous pair of results with some big points, and it served to shake up the standings. But as we make our way into this round, there are 3 to go. And after today, and after our drivers' trip to the Grand Prix layout of Zolder, they'll then be making their way back to the US of A in a week's time on the 8th of December for the Sonoma Raceway, the sports car alternate layout, which is new to the iRacing simulator as of this season. We'll be seeing our drivers take that on, and then we'll be bringing things to a close just in time for Christmas on the 15th of December at the Mount Panorama Raceway Circuit, but you'll know and love it and refer to it as Bathurst, and it'll be down under where our drivers duel to victory. But as they come into this round, well, we talked a little bit about the calendar, let's talk a little bit about about our host circuit. And as we can see at the Grand Prix layout of Circuit Zolder, it's a rather iconic layout, located in the Heusden-Zolder sector of the Limburg region of Belgium. 10 corners spanning its 2.47 mile length, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but also the track maps that come with it. A lot of these corners, of course, they've got quite extended names, and we're not going to be able to refer to them all the way through, but let's talk a little bit about the lap. And you can see one of the big things as well here is the fact we have short straights. There's no major long straights for our drivers to be able to use slipstream to gain an advantage. They will be able to gain a little bit of a toll on the straights, but nothing that's going to get them close enough to be able to guarantee a move. So therefore, they've got to be quick through the corners and daring on the brakes. But as they roar the way across that start-finish line and in towards Erster Corner at turn number 1, it's a sweeping left-hander. It's all about the late apex, and you could say it's all about the late apexes all the way through to the conclusion of turn number 4, in which they will have Stern Wattbocht at turn number 2, that gives away to Canal Bocht at turn number 3, flat out through there, and it's into Lucien Bianchi Bocht at turn number 4, where we complete the first half a lap. At the exact halfway point, they'll make their way into the Klein chicane, or small chicane as it translates into, and at turn number 5, they'll roar the way up the hill and down through Bitter Corner at turn number 6, and then they'll go into the right-left double right combination, known as Talarman Bocht, the reference to the name of the circuit as it was originally known, Circuit Talarman. As they come out of turn 7, it's uphill and downhill run into Boulder Behaagspiel Bocht at turn number 8, the one hairpin on the circuit, after which it's through the kink of turn number 9, a Jochen Rindt Bocht, in reference to the local hero, and then it's Jackie Ickbocht to complete the lap and do it all over again. What is the fourth of our chicanes there, Jackie Ickbocht, and indeed a very tricky chicane with its very tight apexes, albeit a lot of road width on entry, but very little through the chicane itself. But as we make our way into this round, a quick reminder of the rules. We head back to our feature race rule set for tonight, and what we can see is that this continues to be a fixed setup series, with setups provided to our drivers ahead of each and every round of racing. Qualifying will remain as a closed qualifying session, with drivers having free flying laps plus their out lap available to them over that 10-minute period. As for the feature race, it shall be a single feature race tonight of 40 minutes in length, where drivers have one fast repair available should they need it. They may also have to come into the pits for fuel, albeit there is no mandatory pit stop requirement. They come into the pits as needed. And the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate so into more instant points, at which point we may see another trip to the pits. Otherwise, all race journeys shall be conducted post-round. So therefore, as we make our way back to circuit side and qualifying does get underway, well, let's talk a little bit about our championship standings coming into this round as well, and starting with the Pro Drivers' Championship after 3 rounds racing. And we can see it's Tom Davidson who leads the Sim Racing Collective Esports by an advantage of 14 points. But that advantage, it's not growing too quickly, and it really is the situation whereby it's the scramble behind Davidson as to who's going to be the one to chase him down, with Francesco Pettelin moving into second for Absolute Motorsport Ace Liv. After he demonstrated his sprint race credentials last time out, he's definitely been one of the fastest drivers in the GT4 Pro category. However, the challenge he's had is on strategy. It's never quite worked out in the first 2 rounds. So could this be a return to the norm for Pettelin, or is he going to be able to put his strategic woes behind him and perhaps pull off another win today? Alessandro Dalladone, fellow Italian driver there for the Italian job, he's moved into third. He dropped from second to third after a bit of a difficult day at the office last time out at VIR, but still the points are coming his way. Head of Kieran Sharp for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, who was on course for a landmark result until it all went wrong with quite an absolutely disastrous spin in one of the races, and therefore for Sharp he dropped some major points. In fifth, Matt Sheraton for Aztec Racing. He continues to gradually make his way up the order ahead of Felix Moggy, with the correct racing driver only 3 points ahead of Andrew Pike, and the Sim Racing Collective Esports driver then 10 points ahead of both Ivan Falcone for the Italian job and Martin Blankensteiner for Cracked Racing. Both drivers enjoying some absolutely brilliant battling at VIR, none more so than Falcone, who really did steal the spotlight with some of his moves. In 10th is Mav Gardner, a further point behind for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. Then best the rest of the 11th is Craig Twardock for MSA Racing, who's had a bit of a false start to this season. His opening round was very solid, but rounds 2 and 3 have really brought him back down to earth, and the Briton right now is hoping for a better second half of the season, with Alan McCain, Marlon Schwab, Nick Clemens and Miles Owens completing a top 15, and behind the Altura Esports driver on 8 points is Jack Southfield for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. And yet to score any points in the pro class, we do have there Bobby Moss, Lucas Sauer and also Louis Hesketh. But coming to the AM class now, and the complexion here, well, it's a little bit of the same, with Valerio Petretti leading now by only 7 points for the Italian job over Daniel Moffat, the privateer. Now, Moffat would argue if he'd had the round he wanted at VIR, he would still be leading, but it all went wrong right at the start of race number 1, and Petretti was the one who picked up all the pieces. Craig Murphy sits in third for Manx Racing, and right now forms the second half of the field on 58 points, only ahead of Bart Raven based on result countback. The The cracked racing driver, meanwhile, has got to worry about 4 points behind because there's Francesco Cordulo, the Passioni course driver, who we believe is expected to have a landmark result at some point this season because he has shown a lot of potential, but he hasn't quite been able to put the potential out on the circuit. Mark Davenport is in 6th for Manx Racing, and what a frustrating season it's been for Davenport, given the fact that he's been on the pace of Daniel Moffat, but he's had all the bad luck, and that bad luck translated into a rather dismal end to his racing at VIR. Clive Bourne sits in 7th for Big Pig Racing by VRS, only a point ahead of Lenny Hansen, as the two of them continue to battle. And behind the bottle job racing driver are the three privateers of Martin Rendell, Paul Sims and Valerio Tedeschi. Tedeschi being best of the rest in a length ahead of Sam Smith, with Paolo Maniti, Mickey Ford and Luke Smith completing your top 15. And the last driver with points to their name so far is the Italian jobs Vincenzo Corello, and yet to score any points is the Italian jobs Nico Martinuso, head of Joe Pinder. And ladies and gents, we also do have there, of course, Roman Svetsov and Patrick Den. But that's how the standings stand after 3 rounds, and there's still plenty more racing to come. And as we make our way into this round, then let's take a look at how our drivers are getting on in qualifying at the moment. And as they make the way around, we do look to Tom Davidson, currently provisional fastest in this qualifying session. But you'll notice there, of course, that we have had some rain at the circuit. It's looking very bleak, and therefore we will bring those tyre compounds up on the time tower as well for today. And everyone opting to go with the wet compound. I think that's a very sensible choice in the fact that it does not look as though it's going to be a grippy circuit whatsoever, or a circuit that wants to offer you the dry as an option, at least for now, but perhaps we'll see it later on in the day if anybody is feeling brave enough to dare to dream to do so. As they all continue to roll their way round here, we'll have to see who else is able to find a bit more time, as Felix Smoggy has now gone provisional pole, and well, he's on a provisional pole lap of a 45.372, as Davidson does not improve, and he's got one more lap available to him, as here is Smoggy. Meanwhile, the cracked racing driver in the Ford Mustang, well, he's looking very quick out there in a car that's not normally known for its ability in the wet conditions, but Smoggy is finding a way to make it work, and I presume that he's got a mastery of how to deploy the power and also how to use the traction control and the ABS to his advantage. Keep in mind, of course, the fact that when you are in these wet conditions, even on a fixed setup, I do believe you are allowed to tweak the traction control inputs to respect the conditions. As for the AM class, well, right now it's Bart Raven who's the fastest out there, but he's only the fastest by 400ths over Clive Bourne. And how about that from Clive Bourne? He's currently second fastest to the AM drivers, 10th overall. That's very impressive from Bourne, and right now, if things were to finish as they currently stand in qualifying, he would be on course for his first top 3 in AM qualifying all season. But as soon as I say that, this man just absolutely pierces the sky, puts himself 3/10 off the overall pole time, and that's second place. That's Mark Davenport. My good lord. What we said only moments ago about the fact that Davenport's had one of those seasons where things have just not clicked together whatsoever. He's had so much bad luck, and well, Davenport right now is trying to put that bad luck at bay, and well, as he roars his way around here, the Isle of Man driver, he's not too far away from the end of his qualifying, so he's got 1 lap left. He'll squeeze it in with the time remaining, but this is a very big statement from Davenport, and the statement is he's not here to lose today. He's here to right the wrongs of the first half of the season. As he comes into the braking zone there for the Kleiner chicane and bounces his way on through. And the Petronas AMG sponsored machine right now definitely started to build some momentum. But can he go even higher? Can he potentially even rob Felix Smoggy of overall pole position? We will see, because we've yet to see a driver in AM put themselves on the front row of the grid, let alone take the overall pole position. But never say never. In these changeable conditions, it only takes one driver a bit of confidence and becoming a bit of a rainmeister. We do have Jack Southfield currently in the pit lane, oddly enough, so I believe Southfield might be having some technical issues, and if so, he's going to be starting from the very back of the field. As we look to Matt Cheverton here, he's struggling a bit at the moment. He's currently the lowest placed pro driver who has got a valid lap on the board, and how you can tell the pros versus the AMs is if you look to that timing tower, you'll see those with a silver or grey stripe, they are your pros. Those with a red stripe, they are your AMs, and that's how you know that Cheverton is a pro and he's your lowest placed pro at the moment in the standings, with Luke Smith, an AM driver, and Jack Southfield yet to get a lap on the board, and therefore they'd be starting right from the very back of the effective grid. Time is of the essence here, with 1.5 minutes left to go. Alessandro Dalladone making his way on through, sliding his way down through Bitter Corner and in towards Salam and Bocht. And as the number 61 driver makes his way between the apexes there, they've got to be so careful, because they are encouraged to cut those apex curbs, regardless of the conditions. But the problem is, they cut them too much, they'll pick up a slowdown. Also, they cut them too much in these conditions, what they'll find is that they very quickly aquaplane, because those curbs are incredibly slippery and they do pull water. Albeit with no water falling at the moment, there's no rain rain, it does seem as though what's instead is happening is the fact the water is gradually dissipating. This circuit is getting quicker, but the confidence of drivers is the thing that will separate what will be the boys from the very men, as they say, or will be all the girls from the ladies out there, if there are any female drivers. We don't discriminate here at the Sim Racing Collective. We encourage all genders to race. And as Dowdonny makes his way out of the final 2 quarters, what's this going to be for his final flying lap? He's currently 7th. Can he get himself onto one of the front 2 rows? And the answer is going to be as he crosses that timeline. No, he can't. He stays in 7th place. And I believe we've only got one driver who's on a valid lap at the moment, but with 30 seconds left on the clock, he may not be able to get that lap in. It's Matt Cheverton. With Luke Smith not getting a bad lap on the board, he will be starting 24th, and Jack Southwood has not gone out there either, so he'll be starting the very last of the running order. If they can get the car running, he'll be starting in 25th place, but they're all brave to be making their way out here in these conditions. With these are valid racing conditions, it's not as though we'd red flag the racing, but understand a few drivers may have been caught out by how tricky it's going to be. But as the clock strikes 10 minutes, it does mean qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, that is qualifying over, and we're going to make our way to the grid for our one and only race here today at Circuit Zolder. So as they all make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for round number 4 of the Sim Racing Collective GT4 Series Season 3, as brought to you on iRacing. It is Felix Smoggy who takes a maiden pole position of the season for Cracked Racing, and what a way to do so as well. In absolutely tricky conditions, he takes pole by 2 tenths in the end for Cracked Racing over the Italian driver Francesco Petterlin, the absolute motorsport ace driver there, delivering in qualifying. And well, he's going to try and take the German into turn 1 if he wants to run away with this. Meanwhile, on row number 2, your eyes do not deceive you. That is your AM pole sitter starting 3rd. It is the Isle of Man driver Mark Davenport there for Manx Racing with a monster lap in the mid-portion of qualifying ahead of Tom Davidson, the Pro Championship leader for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, who starts 4th. But he won't be too upset about that because he has his main championship rival very firmly in his sights right in front of him. Francesco Cordulo, what a brilliant qualifying session from him as well. His last qualifying lap for Passione Course saw him move up to 5th place on the qualifying grid right at the end and 2nd in AM. He shares row number 3 with Craig Twardock for MSA Racing, and it's funny that I should mention that Craig Twardock's definitely had a bit of a full start of the season, and suddenly he puts the car in 6th place. I get the feeling he might be enjoying these wet weather conditions in his GT4. And then on row number 4, it's Alessandro Dalladone, the Italian job driver in the company of Marlin Schwab, the DLR FP1 driver, then being followed up only a 10th behind by Kieran Sharp, who was saying to me in the build-up to today he didn't want to repeat the mistakes of VIR, and he was hoping for a solid round. But that 9th place qualifying position is definitely going to give him a good starting position, and many of you may remember how he qualified at Alton Park. He started outside the top 10 and made his way to 2nd place in the end. What can he do from 9th? In 10th, it's Nick Clemens at iRacing Esports, and you can never count Nick out. He's always here to have a good time, and he is one of those drivers who normally does better in the wet in the race compared to how he does in the wet in qualifying. Bart Raven, your 3rd AM driver, he lines up in 11th, best of the rest out overall, and the Cracked Racing driver is joined to make it an all-AM row number 6 by Clive Bourne for Big Pig Racing by VRS. We then have behind them on row number 7, Martin Rendell, the pole sitter in AM for VIR, but today 5th place in AM. The privateer driver holds 2nd off the overall pole time, but he was the best part of 2 tenths faster than Bobby Moss for Nigel Mansell Fan Club, who starts in 14th place. Andrew Pike starts 15th there for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, ahead of Craig Murphy. The Manx Racing driver then having to give way to Mav Gardner for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, and Alan McCain for iRacing Esports, who make up your 9th row, and completing your top 20, it'll be the pair of Paul Sims, the privateer, and Matt Sheraton for Aztec Racing. In 21st, we have your AM Championship leader of Valerio Petretti. How the fortunes continue to sway back and forth, and I think Petretti struggled in these wet conditions at Zolder, but the Italian driver had the company of his fellow countryman in the AM class of Valerio Tedeschi, who starts 22nd. Lenny Hansen will be the final driver on this grid who set a valid lap in qualifying for Bottle Job Racing there in 23rd, and then we will have Jack Southwood starting 24th for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, and last in this grid in 25th place, it's going to be FD Racing's Luke Smith there, who rounds off our 25 car field. Now, most of our drivers are into position. There is a lot of jostling going back and forth on the grid, I believe, with regards to which tyres drivers should run here. But the grid is set and the formation lap is about to get underway. And well, you can see the jigsaw puzzle there on the left-hand side of your screen of the time tower. Half the field have gone with the wets, half the field, or just over half the field, have gone with the slicks, or the dry tyre that's got the D symbol. Meanwhile, wets are denoted by W. And as we get this formation lap underway, well, it does look as though it might be a circuit that's gradually drying here. And those who've gone for the wet wet tyre, I suspect they may be faster at the start of the race, but they may struggle as the race goes on. But knowing they've got to pit at some point in order to put fuel in the car, because they can't get to the end on a single tank of fuel typically in our feature races, they'll be hoping that they can make the tyre swap there. But something tells me the amount of fuel versus the amount of time they spend changing tyres, of which they happen in parallel, or at the same time, you could say, rather than in sequence, I don't think they're going to be putting enough fuel in to cover off the time that it takes to change all 4 tyres. But then again, I've been wrong in the past, but something tells me I might be right here today. But as Mark Davenport makes his way around here, well, he's got that company, of course. Francesco Cordulo right behind him on the grid. Very interesting to see exactly how those two start off, because if we have to talk about race starts, Cordulo has been one of the quickest starters in the AM class in general this season. Davenport, he's been a good starter to be fair, but Cordulo's normally been the one who's made up the most places on the opening lap by comparison of the two drivers. And I do agree there with DQ Dave in the YouTube chat, who says people running slicks, this is going to be very ballsy from them, or in other words, they've got a lot of confidence. And indeed, I suspect our slick runners are going to have a very slow couple of laps to start this one, as we do jump on board with Andrew Pike, your 15th place car here, and as he makes one around, he's opted to start on the slick tyre. And well, I can tell you one thing about the 57 driver, he is one of those that in these conditions, whatever tyre he goes to, he normally gets it right. So the fact he's gone to the slick is normally a big yardstick for the rest of the Sim Racing Collective drivers to also go to the slick tyre. And that's based on my experience of seeing him race GT3s and also touring cars, where he's normally picked the right tyre at the right time to pull off some incredible results and help his teammates to an incredible result. But what you can see here is they make the way through to Lemon Box Chicane. They've got no speed at all, and they're only allowed a certain amount of room to move around here, because they do have to hold the formation for the majority of the lap. And right now I can imagine Pike is going to be begging for the safety car to go a bit faster, just to try and inject a bit more heat into the tyre. That tyre is going to be freezing cold, and keep in mind as well, typically GT4 machines do not get tyre warmers either, so therefore they do start with a very cold tyre that's only going to get colder when it's about the slick, when it is on a road that is wet. But as our drivers make the way out of turns 8 and 9, we are only one corner away now from going green flag racing, and it is going to be to Felix Smoggy this time, his first time of the season for doing this. It'll be to the Cracked Racing driver to take us to the green for 40 minutes of racing action here in round 4 of 6 in the Sim Racing Collective GT4 Series Season 3 to iRacing. And it's lights out, away we go. Here's Felix Smoggy, goes as early as he can, but look at Francesco Pettelin, and Pettelin's now at the start. He's already to lead his Pettelin as they roar the way into turn 1. All the field safe on the way, but it's going to be staggered 3 wide there for the majority of the field. As Smoggy and Pettelin both go deep, they both just about stay on the circuit, but here comes Mark Davenport. Davenport's going to go around the outside. He's going to make it 3 wide here into turn number 2. That's brave. My good lord, I wouldn't risk that in the end of the race, let alone the very start, but Mark Davenport takes the lead, and as they all make the way around, well, right now, there's been some incredible bravery from our drivers as Tom Davidson continues to push up the inside of Felix Smoggy. On he goes. Felix Smoggy meanwhile falling backwards there with Craig Tardot looking up the inside, and the MSA Racing driver, well, he's definitely got a monster down the side of the car. As the car going around, that's Marlon Schwab into the wall. It rolls back across the road. Oh no! And when he just parks in the middle of the road, they all try to take a race of action. Many are trying to stamp on the brakes. Some take a race of action, and I don't know how Marlon Schwab was able just to park himself in the middle of the road like that, but credit to him where it's due. In the fact, it could have been far, far worse, but in the end they've able to survive it just about. But we had a few drivers get it a bit wrong. In fact, we've got several drivers with damage to their cars, which means they will need to come into the pits at the end of this lap, if not towed to the pit. But we'll get you an update on that when we can, and also some replays of what's exactly happened at the start. As Pettin in there very sideways coming out of turn 7B, and he goes even more sideways there as he comes up through the corner, slam on the brakes there for several drivers, but somehow they avoid the wayward BMW M4, and Pettin hits the barrier there, but he's able to carry on, but he's got some damage, no doubt about it, as meanwhile, under braking it in towards turn number 8, it's side by side and side by side again here. You'd think it's Noah's Ark with the wet conditions and them being in pairs, but it's not. It's GT4s right now, and the conditions are not quite on the biblical scale that Noah's Ark was. But meanwhile, Alessandro Dalladonna here, well, he's going to put his faith in for a move around the outside to the inside through turn number 10, but Jackie Ickbocht, he's not going to be able to find it, and in the end Bobby Moss now will be right on his rear as we jump on board with the McLaren for Nigel Mansell fan club, and well, he's looking one way then the other, but he's not going to be able to find it as they come towards the end of an open lap. But my goodness, what an opening lap here. We've seen some very brave manoeuvres for drivers. We've got a circuit that is absolutely soaked still. It is drying, but not at the rate I think the slick runners wanted, and therefore those on the wet tyre right now have definitely seen their confidence put in the right place. But of course, how long will it last for? That's the big question mark. As it's a run wide for Dalladone once again. Twardok still with him as they make the way past the solar panels, and as they head in towards the next corner, Dalladone runs out wide, so he's going to lose multiple places there to Twardok and Moss. He falls back into 6th place, but right now your race leader is an AM driver. Mark Davenport is running away with this from Manx Racing, and Bart Raven is your second AM driver. He's in second. Now Davidson followed by Twardok, who has Bobby Moss and Alessandro Dalladone fighting for position with him, and that's going to be Moss and Twardok through the chicane, and in the end Twardok holding on for now, but he has picked up a slowdown for cutting the track limit, so therefore he's going to have to give the time back, but he'll try and do it as tactically as possible and not give up any places. You then have Clive Bourne in 7th place, 30 Ram drives ahead of Felix Smoggy. That is your top 8. They've all survived it, so thereabouts. Then we have Alan McCain currently in 9th, for Matt Cheverton having come all the way from 20th place. He's up into 10th as he makes his way up past there. Martin Rendell riding him like the back of a bad rash. Hold up, there's a car parked there off the road. Couldn't quite see who that was, in fact. I'm wondering who was parked there. Was that Paul Sims looking in the wrong direction a lap down? I think it was. But meanwhile, Matt Cheverton, he didn't have time to look at that. All he's got time to look for is his braking markers and also the puddles of water as he goes straight on at the hairpin. As he does, Southwood's going to come through as well. Southwood started 24th. He's up into 11th for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. And right now, it is chop and change everywhere you look as we say hello to Shroom 1, who is cheering on Tom Davidson, who's currently your leading pro driver, but he's not your leader overall. As Mark Davenport says, a new fastest lap of the race there, and indeed the initial benchmark, but it's then Bart Raven who goes even quicker with 47.46. So that's your 2 wet runners up front, and then you've got slick runners intermingling with wet runners, and well, we're waiting to see when that slick tyre potentially comes into the operating window. If it does, that is one of the bigger problems as well here. Do our drivers lay down enough heat on the tarmac to be able to burn it away? As meanwhile, we had somebody get it very wrong there. Couldn't quite catch who it was. I think that might have been Nick Clemens going sideways. Yes, it was at turn number 2. Clemens, who's just come out the pit lane to go a lap down after the chaos of the start. Well, he's just lost his rear wing as well for reversing into the Armco barrier, and Clemens is going to be making another trip to the pit lane before long if that continues, as the field makes his way on past him. Cargo very sideways behind. I think that was Valerio Petretti. Yes, it was, and Petretti's got all the way round, and I believe Petretti trying to get himself back together. We'll get a replay of that very shortly, and right now, everywhere you look, it's all happening, and drives are struggling left, right, and centre. But as they all bring it together, well, we have a brief moment then to talk a little bit about how things started in this race, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get a replay of the race start, and here we go. So this was the race start as we do look to the blimp camera for your start. And as all our drivers went green flag racing, well, you'll see that Petelin had a decent start. In fact, he got the best start of everybody as he looked around the outside of Felix Smoggy in towards turn number 1. And Smoggy went defensive, so the 2 drivers in the end ran each other wide on the corner, fighting, but kept it just about in track limit. And as they made their way through, it went wrong for Nick Clemens in the rear of the picture. That was Clemens going on the round, spinning with, I believe there, that was Kieran Sharp he made contact with, so they had a bit of a moment. After their coming together, we saw what was that brilliant move from Mark Davenport around the outside of both Petelin and also Smoggy, so he started to bolt away, but Francesco Petelin in the end was able to hold on to second. Craig Tardok started to make his way up the running order. This blimp camera captured everything, albeit a bit of a hazy camera, but he just about make it out, and then something went wrong behind. Multiple drivers being caught up there, Marlon Schwab being one of them. Can we get a bit of a closer look as to what happened to Marlon Schwab with regards to that incident, because it was a nasty moment for Schwab and not a happy one at that? And the answer is yes, we can, and here's the replay of Schwab's incident. In fact, this is not the replay of the Schwab incident. This was later on. We go back a little bit earlier in time, and this is Marlon Schwab making his way through turn number 4. And will we see what happened? Oh, somebody else got it wrong and collected Schwab at that. Couldn't quite see who it was. That was a Ford Mustang that went across the road and caused everyone to have to part the seas there. So quite the incident, but we couldn't quite see who was the progenitor of it. We only saw the outcome of it. And I think Francesco Cordulo was caught up in that. And this was the onboard of Francesco Cordulo. He was in the Pacho de course, and he was the one who started it. So got the power down, and as he did, car cut loose and rolled across the road. And unfortunately, well, while the iRacing Esports car made its way into him, Marlon Schwab was just parked up there, and I think he was very grateful that everyone was able to avoid him, but not so for what was there, Francesco Cordulo, and he had to tow to the pits. But with that, we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. More to come, no doubt about it. And right now, things are definitely going to get interesting. They're going to get quite frisky out out here, but we are still seeing the wet tyre is the optimum tyre to be on at the moment. The slick tyre is still trying to find its pace, as Tom Davidson currently running third, your leader of the pros. He's now got your wet runner of Bobby Moss directly behind him. So Davidson is holding on. He is your high slick runner, and he is trying to pump as much heat into his tyres as he can, but it is a very big uphill struggle he's going to push through. And keep in mind, of course, this is only one race. We've got 40 minutes of racing in total, of which we've already cleared the best part of 7.5 minutes. And it has been absolutely on a knife edge here for many a driver. And Davidson sets another personal best, but the fastest lap of the race now goes to Alessandro Dalladone, a 46.6. The Italian job driver fighting here with Craig Twardock. Now that is interesting because Dalladone is a slick runner. So the slick is starting to find some pace. It's only taken the best part of 4 laps, but it's getting there. And as Dalladone gets elbowed out wide there versus Twardock, albeit I don't think there was any intentional contact, but his position on the road suggested that essentially he did get escorted out wide, but he was on the outside line to try and make that move into turn number 2. And well, he took the risk and he went for it. Well, now he's got Clive Bourne looking at him. Meanwhile, we look to the front of this group. This is Davidson and Moss. Moss looking one way, then the other. Bobby Moss going all in here in the McLaren. On the inside he goes to the Nigel Mansell fan club, and in the end it's a smooth move there for the number 5 driver, and the red 5 moves forward. And I do have to wonder whether he's got a moustache like Nigel Mansell. I'll have to ask him about that later on tonight. But meanwhile, it's Craig Twardock here fights. He fights hard versus Davidson, but on the inside it's Alessandro Dalladone, and the Italian driver makes contact. In the end, it gets a little bit messy, but he does give up the time, and that's going to be Clive Bourne around. Dalladone takes evasive action, and suddenly Alan McCain squeezes his way past all of it. My goodness, that got very hairy in a very short space of time. We're going to need a replay of that when we can, because goodness me, that was a bit of a nightmare moment. But they were able to all about side. But you've got to feel for Clive Bourne, who's suddenly seen all his progress regress down to 10th place. But here's a replay. So this was Clive Bourne we ride on board with, and he was fighting hard for Big Fig Racing by VRS. Dalladone gets it wrong. He avoids Dalladone, cuts the inside there into the right-hander, and Dalladone's nose was still there, I suspect, and that's what sent Bourne all the way round. I don't think it was any malice meant. I think it'd be a racing incident as far as they were considered, but we look to the alternative cameras here, and we're looking at Alessandro Dalladone in particular. Lost the rear, Bourne tucked up the inside. Dalladone was there after Bourne had a slide of his own, and I think there, well, you would argue perhaps that Dalladone didn't put his nose where it didn't belong, but understandably, I don't think either driver really had time to react to the fact the other driver made a mistake, and therefore I think Dalladone would argue I couldn't have known that Bourne had made a mistake. I committed to my line as Bourne had committed to his line earlier on in the chicane. That's going to be a very hard one if that goes to the stewards. I'm not sure how they'll deal with that one, to be honest, but thankfully I'm in the commentary booth and not a steward, and therefore we only have the camera angles we have, and they have a lot more footage available to them should they need it. But back to your live racing. Bobby Moss right now, he makes his way down towards the Kleiner chicane, the place where he took the place off of Tom Davidson only a lap ago, and right now he's trying to make his way away, but he won't be if he cuts the chicane like that, because he'll pick up a slowdown and it will have to be served within 30 seconds. As otherwise it will be upgraded to a drive-through penalty, and well, those drive-through penalties, they cost you even more time, and you can't do anything else in the pits. You literally have to drive through the pit lane, and that is that. But meanwhile, speaking of that is that, Marlon Schwab would have thought that when it all went wrong at the start of the race. But right now, having made one trip to the pits and he's taken some repair work to the car, he's back out there on his wet tyres and he's on the move here as he chases after Francesco Petelin. And Petelin, meanwhile, is on the slicks by comparison. So therefore, both these drivers still committing to what they started on tyre-wise. And Schwab getting closer and closer through the corners. Petelin the faster on the straights in that BMW, as we'd expect based on the balance of performance. The Porsche is the cornering car, whereas the BMW is, well, the straight line machines. But you can see there Petelin really struggling as they come over the crest into turn number 6. Well, I think this is going to be a foregone opportunity for Schwab. Petelin's going to hold it on the outside there. Schwab being very compliant, to be fair. Too wide for Ripper to corner. In the dry is dangerous enough. In the wet, it does require both drivers to lift off there. And I think Schwab being very complicit with regards to the fact making sure that they were going to make it through there together. So very good respectful racing between them, and Petelin holds the position for now. But I think it's going to be a question of when, not if, another attempt on the place is going to come for 16th overall. And Marlon Schwab right now knocking on the door, and Petelin is trying to keep the door shut for as long as he can. Through they come, and a new fastest lap of the race has happened. Meanwhile, from Bobby Moss on wet tyres, he's moved to a 46.25 to the nearest 100th. So right now we are seeing the wet and the slick tyre able to push for similar lap times. The wet tyre is able to achieve those times more comfortably compared to the slick, but the slick runners who find the tyre temperature for a brief moment, they do suddenly have a huge influx of pace. So that is a sign of what is to potentially come here over the distance, and it all comes down to just how much heat they can get into those slick tyres for the slick runners. Meanwhile, we can see to watch Schwab as he falls away from Petelin for a bit. Didn't have the best of runs out of the final chicane, and therefore he's now got a bit more work to do once again. But looking further down the order, still running out there, it's Francesco Cudulo, albeit he finds himself a lap down, intermingling with the top 10 here. That's not going to be very easy to negotiate, because blue flags will be waving. He'll be expected to be compliant for Passione course. The only problem is around here is the fact, given he's on the wet tyre, it'll be a bit easier, but he's still got to come off of what will be the relatively safe, drier line compared to what will be the standing water lines, and that's not going to be the nicest of things. And he might actually hold his line for quite some time, before he does let the car behind that's on the lead lap through, for the simple reason he has to facilitate the lead lap car, but he must do so in a safe manner. And his argument would be, I'm not going to pull onto a puddle because that's unsafe. I lose control of the car, I could end up becoming a bowling ball. But meanwhile, going bowling into turn one is Tom Davidson, and in the end he ends up with a gutter ball there to the gravel as he just runs deep but not quite falls into the gravel. But Bobby Moss, he takes the place back for the lead of the pro class, but he's got Craig Twardock looking around the outside of him, and as they make the way out to turn number 2, Twardock sliding loose there through 2 in towards 3 right now. Bobby Moss is doing everything right for Nigel Mansell fan club in order to hold on to lead of the pro class. In fact, with Twardock making that error and also Davidson completely making a ham sandwich out of turn number 1, you can understand if Moss right now, we feel as though he can start to break away a little bit, but every time he gets a gap, he then ends up picking up a slowdown somewhere on circuit. He's got to avoid the slowdown. If he can do that, then he can get this job done, and he'll be able to extract a bit of a lead as the sun continues to try and poke its eyes out from the clouds, but right now it's not really coming on through, and therefore we are seeing this circuit only dry at a very slow rate. And well, so many drivers gambled on whether to go to the slick or the dry tyres. Bobby Moss there completely cuts the chicane. That's going to be a significant slowdown penalty he'll serve, and he'll also add a 1x or an instant point to his allotment, and he won't want to keep picking up those instant points. They only get a finite number, and I can tell you one thing, if he was to pick up an instant point a lap, he would be getting a drive-through penalty at some point, because we're going to have more laps over the 40 minutes than we are the number of available instant points on that formula. As he runs deep there at turn number 8, Moss is really struggling right now in that McLaren, even on the wet tyre. I think he's just struggling to push hard and break away. I think he's in that mental space where he wants to win in the pro class, and he knows this is a prime opportunity, but because of the conditions, he's pressuring himself into unnecessary errors. Meanwhile, Craig Twardock on the slick tyre, because he's got a much more finite amount of grip, he's respecting the grip, and that's why he's able to get so much closer. As we ride on board here with Craig Twardock for a brief moment, it's going to be side by side down into turn number 1. Twardock's there. Moss has got to try and hold it around the outside to get the inside of turn 2, but in the end, Twardock will just take the place there, and that is the difference in confidence right now. Twardock doesn't have as much grip, but in that BMW, he's understood the grip he's got, and therefore he's able to take the positions, albeit slides a bit loose there through 2 into 3. Moss will come back at him now. The McLaren's wet tyres there will give him the advantage into turn 4. Moss is going to send it, but in the end, he can't quite send it fully, and they will leave it there as they come out of 4 and down towards the chicane. You can see Tom Davidson starting to get closer behind. Alessandro Dalladoni's now just set a 45.21 on the slick tyre. That is a second faster than any of our wet runners up front. So therefore, Dalladoni is now becoming the pace marker with regards to the slick tyre here. And this is where we might be starting to see the pace turn, albeit he picks up a slowdown penalty at the Kleiner chicane. So he's going to have to burn that quite quickly. I think the Italian job driver here is perhaps fancying his chances now of being able to move forward so long as he doesn't keep picking up these slowdowns. Felix Smoggy meanwhile behind him, and Alan McCain and Martin Rendell, they're all together. And obviously you've got Jack Southfield a bit further back. And let's talk a little bit more about Southfield, because remember, he started 24th. He's up to 10th place in the Aston Martin. He is the only Aston Martin on this grid. The Sim Racing Collective eSports Triad, daring to be the unicorn car. And well, if you're wondering why this car has not proven that popular this season and doesn't does not normally prove that popular in any GT4 racing series at the moment is because it has a very odd gearbox when it comes to the fixed setup, whereby it does prefer to be in a much higher gear than any other GT4 car, and therefore it's a car that you do have to drive a bit differently. You have to, funny enough, drive it in those higher gears, and you lose a lot of power in the lower end, particularly on circuits where you've got a lot of low speed corners. You really do seem to struggle. However, that can be very beneficial here at Circuit Zolder, because yes, you've got a lot of low speed corners, but having a lot less power at the lower end of the spectrum actually helps you when you're in the wet, because it means you can be a bit more aggressive with your throttle inputs on corner exit compared to, say, the likes of the Ford Mustang or the Mercedes AMG. So therefore, this Aston Martin may actually be helping Southfield by being a car that's not as quick to get back up the gearbox on corner exit, as we have just had Alessandro Dalladone find his way past Tom Davidson off camera. And Dalladone now up into 5th place, ahead of Davidson. And he's all over the back of Bobby Moss like a bad rash. He's going to look up the inside here, and Dalladone goes to the move. He does what Moss did to Davidson earlier on, but it's not going to quite work out. And in the end, oh no, and he goes wrong for Moss, and Dalladone's got no time to react. And Bobby Moss will be sent spinning there to the gravel, as Alessandro Dalladone meanwhile loses front bumper. And Tom Davidson picks up a place there for free, and understandably, we're thinking that's going to be 2 places for free very shortly, for the simple reason that damage, Dalladone is going to need to get repaired at some point. As meanwhile, that's across the gravel. That's Felix Smoggy. Does he get it stopped? Yes, he does. But Felix Smoggy in the end goes absolutely siphoning off the road down to braking. And I can imagine that's a bit of standing water he's clipped on the brakes on slick tyres. And suddenly the car has completely taken over from its driver. And he's suddenly the passenger and he's not in control. But thankfully, it did not come to blows and did not collect anyone along the way, as Alan McCain and Martin Rendell catch up. And Martin Rendell, in fact, he's been under the radar a little bit. He's looking up the inside of McCain there for 8th place. Rendell on the wet tyre in his Porsche and is now coming up through the field quite quickly. The only problem he's got, of course, is the leaders of the AM class, who are 1st and 2nd still overall. They're both on the wets as well, but perhaps Rendell has now found where the wet tyre works in the Porsche, and he goes up the inside, but in the end that's contact with McCain. Rendell sent sideways there, the camera angle not being very useful to tell us whether he was right on to go for that move or not, or whether he's a bit too opportunistic. As Bobby Moss comes into the pit lane, and well, after that contact with Dalladone, understandably, I think the damage he's picked up has definitely not helped him. But meanwhile, we come back to a replay of lap number 10, and in particular starting with the Dalladone battle with Bobby Moss. It was on exit there, and Moss then came jumping over the apex curve of the chicane. He's already spinning around, and Dalladone helped him on his way. In fact, how can we get on board from what was Dalladone's perspective? Yes, we can, and here you'll see it live, ladies and gentlemen. You can hear the contact there, and by the time Dalladone had been able to see what was going on, he had nowhere to go. So in the end, it really was, he had to make the contact. He had no choice. If he tried to jink the car to the left, he would have lost control himself and experienced what Bobby Moss was going to experience, which was the car would have slipped loose on him, because he'd just come off of the apex curve of the chicane and the rear tyres would have had no grip. We also had this happen for what was Felix Smoggy only moments later. This was a lot of drama here coming down into Tullamarmbach, side by side there at the time with a fellow Ford Mustang, and under braking, the car just cutting loose there under braking and going straight on. Can we get the on board of that? I think we can, and here it is. So under braking he went. Oh my goodness, no, it was not just under braking, there was contact there. That made my heart jump out my chest, hearing that shunt to the side of the car. And well, suddenly it went wrong for Felix Smoggy, and that was a Ford Mustang alongside, and couldn't quite see who it was. I think in fact it was a BMW there, but what a shunt it was. And in the end, well, somehow Felix Smoggy getting away with that, but that could have been far, far worse. And well, a bit of contact there, not helping him out at all as we come back to your live racing. But whilst all that's happened, we've had Bart Raven come into the pit lane from 2nd place. He's been involved in a bit of drama as well, has Raven, off camera, and he now makes his way to a stop. Halfway point of the race is here. Here's a quick replay. He's changing tyres in the pits. I'm not sure what he's going to, but what exactly happens, the question. And down towards the pit entry he came, and as he did, Raven went straight on, and I think he's going to go even deeper. No, in fact, in the end, he just took his time into the pit lane there, and I think was worried about getting it wrong. So credit where it's due. I think our sensor for drivers having a bit of an instant got it a bit wrong there, but Bart Raven making his way into the pit lane, car up on the jacks, and I think that's a sign he's going to go to the slick. Meanwhile, we come back to your race leader, Mark Davenport. Now, he's leading, but the gap to Craig Twardock is coming down. Now, is that because he's found traffic, is it because the wet tyre is struggling? We don't really know. We don't have enough data to tell either hypothesis apart at this point. But what we can tell you is that the AM overall leader, who's looking to make history here today to become the first ever AM driver to take an overall win in the GT4 series, well, right now, that prospect to becoming a record maker is being broken very soon if Twilight gets close enough. And I get the feeling with the way that Davenport's sliding all over the place at the moment, that wet tyre is struggling a little bit. Perhaps it's overheated, and therefore now he's having to essentially try to pay it back in kind. As he makes his way through the chicane, Twilight is closing and closing quickly, and right behind Mark Davenport, that is Clive Bourne, who on his own slick tyre is looking much quicker as he tries to unlap himself here, Clive Bourne, and Davenport's not in a happy place here. Bourne knows he's got a lot more pace. He's trying to show it to Davenport. He's saying to him, go quicker, because I've got so much more than you, and I don't want to deal with the blue flags. But the problem is now he's going to have to give space here, because that's Twilight up his inside. Twilight here is on a charge. He's on the slick tyre as well, so the wet tyre has given up in Davenport's hands, and that Mercedes right now is looking to struggle on. But understandably, when he comes into the pits, it is going to be a tyre change. It's going to be a much longer pit stop. And I can tell you that Bart Raven, he has come into the pits. He's put the fuel in, and also he's changed the tyres to go to a slick, and in total it was 37 seconds stationary time, whereas drivers just putting fuel in the cars are looking at about 15 to 17 seconds. But here comes Twilight up the inside of Davenport. He moves into lead. Davenport does not offer any resistance, and Craig Twilight proving the slick tyre was the right tyre to start on, albeit you had to survive the best part of 17 minutes before it's really coming to its own. Davenport, well, he's got plenty of time to work with, given that Martin Rendell is the next driver, who is 22.5 seconds behind him. If I was Mark Davenport at this point, I would be in at the end of this lap, and I'd be getting the slick on, because the full process here is we're 22-second lead. That is going to offset the amount of extra time I'm going to need to spend in the pits having the tyres change as well as putting the fuel in, or it's going to be he's about 4 seconds behind Rendell should Rendell do the same. That's what Davenport's got to work with here. He's got to be thinking now about the longer period of race, because otherwise he's going to fall backwards the rest of the Anfield at this point, and all that lead he's crafted will be for naught with 17 minutes and the final lap to go. It's easier for us to say that in the commentary booth. In the driver's situation right now, in that cockpit, Davenport can't be thinking about strategy too much. He's got to be thinking about keeping this car together. As here comes Alessandro Dalladone, moving at 4th, second place overall. He's going to look around the outside here. Tom Davidson further behind him. And then Jack Southfield's a lot further back, 7.5 seconds behind them. But Dalladone around the outside of Davenport. There's contact between the two. And it goes sideways there for Dalladone. Davenport in the end makes further contact. It's a black flag for Dalladone for instant points. And Mark Davenport's race comes off the rims, as now they make the way into turn number 2. Dalladone up the inside again. There's more contact between the two of them, and the gloves come off. Davenport goes sideways, and this race is all going backwards to Davenport, and suddenly what's looking to be an open goal opportunity for an AM win here today is now looking under major threat. Southfield goes through. Felix Smoggy trying to go around the outside. All the slick runners right now are feeling very buoyant at this, as Smoggy goes all the way out to the gravel. Well, that's going to be a bit of an illegal overtake there, but he doesn't make the move happen. He falls backwards behind Davenport, and as they come down towards the climb of chicane right now, Davenport definitely feeling the bruise and the bumps. As Martin Rendell is not too far behind. There is Rendell, your second place AM driver. And Rendell is on his own wet tyres here, so Rendell's going to have to come on in, and then it will be the question of where is Bart Raven in all this, because Raven right now is the leading AM driver who has taken a pit stop and is on the slick tyre. So Bart Raven could win this by default, defending on when Davenport comes into the pit lane, and Martin Rendell as well. And do either of those drivers gamble and stand on a wet tyre that seems to be getting hotter and hotter, and the circuit is not offering optimum conditions for them to try and cool it down anymore? We will have to wait and see. We've got some time still remaining in this race, as Clive Bourne meanwhile looking for a move on Craig Murphy here for 5th place in the AM class. And these two drivers right now, they've both pitted, and Tom Davidson behind their lead lap runner find himself coming up to a battle of two AM drivers who are lap down. The AM drivers here more focused on themselves, understandably, than letting the leader through. And as they come down towards turn number 1, Bourne being elbowed to the inside there by Murphy, who says no you don't. Bourne says yes I do. 3 wide into turn 1 they go. Davidson on the outside, I think, trying to say to him, excuse me guys, I'm on the lead lap here, can you let me go? But right now they don't care, and as they make the way to turn 2, suddenly it is what is now the Porsche Craig Murphy that says, oh okay Tom, I'll let you go. And now Clive Bourne's going to be thinking, okay, milk this to the maximum potential, which is try and use it to get a bit of a gap to Murphy before I do let Tom Davidson on past. Well, that was a bit of a strategic move there from Clive Bourne to have to force Craig Murphy to deal with Tom Davidson. It's worked out, but understandably Davidson in the heat of the moment is not going to be too impressed with how that's played out, because that's opened up even more time to Craig Twardock who now has a 9.5 second lead. And will Davidson finally picks his way past Clive Bourne coming over the hill? Or does he here, as Bourne still on that inside line? And in the end, he slides a little bit loose, but he does let Davidson take that place, but he does not make it easy. And Davidson, understandably, I think right now is going to feel as though that's probably been the hardest pair of cars to make his way past and put a lap on in a long time. But we look here to Kieran Sharp versus none other than Francesco Petalin. And well, both drivers here right now trying to salvage something out of this. Sharp has yet to pit, it should be pointed out. Petalin has pitted by comparison. So understandably, you would think that Kieran Sharp right now is fighting for what is a different race. Petalin goes up the inside, and that's why Sharp does not really offer too much resistance other than force Petalin to take an inside line there, which would be natural. So Sharp in the end lets Petalin move up into 11th place, 9th in Pro. But there's still plenty more to go here before all is said and done. And goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, this is definitely a race that is going to keep on giving. As meanwhile, in the pit lane, we've had some drama, I think, for Alessandro Dalladonna, who's got it wrong coming into the pit. And the same for Clive Bourne, who's making his way out through. There's Craig Murphy. Where's Clive Bourne? There he is in the Ford Mustang. Has had a bit of difficulty, but have we got a replay to explain what's happened? Yes, we have. So this was the drivers making the way then towards the pit. We're looking at Alessandro Dalladonna. Bourne was, I believe, in front of him. So two separate instances. Oh, a lot of grass they're taking from Dalladonna. And in the end, has the stamp on the brakes, just about gets it stopped in the nick of time. And meanwhile, what exactly happened to Clive Bourne? And, well, I think in the end he just went straight to the gravel. We don't really see what's happened to Clive Bourne. I think we're going to get a proper replay of what happened to him now. Here it is. And Bourne making his way in towards the final quarter. As he did so, very tender on entry, but the car goes sideways and loose and goes spinning on around, and he ejects himself off the road there. And thankfully for the Big Pig Racing by VRS 807, he doesn't end up in the middle of the road, otherwise that would have been a bit of a nightmare. But back to your live racing we come, and as we do, well, all the pit stops are almost done, although I say that, right now our top 9 have all yet to pit, so we're still waiting to see what they do. Dalladonna, of course, came into the pit to serve his drive-through penalty that had to be served when 3 laps had been awarded, otherwise it would have been upgraded to a disqualification immediately, I do believe, based on the iRacing shooting system. And, well, in serving that, he comes back out in 9th place, 42 seconds off the leader. Speaking of who, Craig Twardock right now, he's absolutely bolting away at the very front of the field. You're looking at Tom Davidson, who has fallen down to 4th place in recent laps. And I believe Davidson's had a bit of drama. And in fact, here is the drama for Tom Davidson. So Davidson at the time was running in 2nd place overall in Pro and lost the rear through Talarman Bocht. And as he made his way off the road, well, you can see there the drivers who made the way on through, including Jack Southfield and Felix Smoggy. So that explains it all. And Davidson in having to try and get the car unbeached. He did so, but it took a lot of time. So as we come back to live racing, 11 minutes left on the clock. Here is your leader firstly, Craig Twardock, with a 13-second gap. However, that gap is being chiselled away, but you won't believe who is chiselling it away. It's the man who started 2nd from last in a slightly damaged Aston Martin, Jack Southfield, for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. He's come all the way through the field to 2nd right now, and he is currently the fastest driver of everybody out there. He set the fastest lap as a 40.25 to the nearest 100th, and right now Southfield is showing no signs of slowing down as he hops his way between the apex of turns 5A and 5B. Felix Smoggy is a little bit further behind, and right now Smoggy trying to hunt down that 3rd place spot for Cracks Racing. We do have those pit stops, of course, which are ongoing, including Dalladonna into the pits. So it is Mav Gardner and Alan McCain, 2 of which, Gardner and McCain on wet tyres, I suspect will be putting slicks on. Meanwhile, Dalladonna will stay on his slicks and he'll just make his way back out with a full fuel tank again, or enough to get into the end unscathed with fuel capacity. So there's a lot of intrigue still to come here, even if the battling has calmed down. Dalladonna, who we see here, once he clears the solar panels, well, he makes his way out of the pit lane and heads in towards turn number 2. And the Italian job driver is currently now in 12th place as we briefly lose into the front. I'm sure he'll come back shortly. He's lost out to Moss, Pike and Raven, who have all pitted prior to him and therefore are ahead of him on racetrack. Well, speaking of Bart Raven, with that move to the slick tyre, I think that's going to work out quite nicely for him. Here is Bart Raven, the Cracks Racing driver right now, who is beating the lap times of Rendell and Davenport. And, well, if I had to guess, I would say Bart Raven at this point is your strategic leader in the AM class. He is the highest driver of the AMs who has pitted, and he's on the dry tyre. We are waiting to see when Rendell and Davenport come into pits, presuming they have to come in at some point. But right now, Raven is definitely looking to be the favourite on this one, unless we've got it wrong. The only thing that Davenport and Rendell can do at this point, if they are aware of Raven, if they know what he's doing, they need to pit and they need to stay on wet tyres. But the question is, can they afford to be losing, at the moment at least, can they afford to be losing 4 to 5 seconds a lap to hold on to that lead? And I think the answer is no, they can't, but that's the only option they have if they want track position. And then they're going to have to force the cracked racing driver to find a way through, which may be easier said than done. If Davenport could sweep around the outside of everybody into turn number 2 on the open lap, on a wet versus the slick, there's no reason why Raven can't consider doing the same now that the roles are being reversed. The only thing, of course, that is to the favour of the wet runners is that a slick runner, if you force them off of the dry line, you make them drive on a wet patch and you make them go into somewhere they don't want to put the tyre. So therefore, that is something you can gamble on as a wet runner. You can hold track position and make your slick runners have to go the long way around the houses. As Craig Tarlock is into the pit lane, he makes one in from the lead of the race here, and a very well-crafted lead. The gap has come down to 10 seconds, given how quickly Southfield is running out there. But right now, Twardock definitely the man to beat, as numbers 746 there says in the YouTube chat that Jack is cooking, and definitely right now, if he wins this race, I think they're going to be taking away his cook license and upgrading him to chef, because he has definitely served us up a storm here today. From the back of the field, he's going to make his way to victory, and I believe this is a record-wise in the GT4 series by the Sim Racing Collective. The most places gained to go from the back of the field to a potential race win in any season race. But as they do, we see Tom Davidson here still yet to pit. We've got Craig Tardock in the pit lane. Where's Matt Cheverton, who's yet to pit? There he is. He makes his way on down here, and well, he is going to be up into second place for a brief moment. However, we suspect he will lose positions when he does eventually come to the pits. Twardock comes out of the pits, and we'll see him there beyond the solar panels in 3, 2, 1. There we go. That wasn't rehearsed, and the MSA racing driver makes his way into third. He is your effective leader, and Jack Southfield has gained massively in the pit lane. Southfield's gained the whole part of 9 seconds in the pits to Twardock. Southfield here is absolutely flying. If he's been fuel saving whilst running towards the back of the field, Southfield right now is an absolute monster out there, I can tell you that, as Martin Rendell, meanwhile, is staying out a little bit longer. Davenport's into the pits, but he's coming back out. And where is Mark Davenport? Here he comes. Where is Bart Raven? Here's Raven. So Davenport's going to be back out ahead of Bart Raven, but what has Davenport done? He's gone to the wet. He's done what we thought he would do. He's decided he's got to stay on the wet tyre to hold track position. Now, Raven has got a 7-second gap to cut down versus Davenport, and Martin Rendell on his own wet tyres may choose to do the same here. Davenport is committed to track position first and foremost rather than pace. It's the right thing to do if he wants to win this race, as otherwise he would have to overhaul about a 10-second gap to Raven, but he wants Raven to have to do the hard work. So, with 6.5 minutes in the final lap to go, can Mark Davenport hold off this man who's going to be approaching at least 2 to 3 seconds a lap? That's going to be the challenge, and Davenport right now would know he's got to steel himself for what's to come. Davidson's into the pits, so look out my contact booth window. So is Matt Cheverton. Both drivers are coming in, and well, as they make the way into the pits, they will release Craig Twardock back into lead this race. But Twardock right now has got bigger fish to fry when it comes to that 3-second gap to Southfield, and it is not a comfortable gap. Further down the order, we look to Paul Sims versus Francesco Cadulo as they fight over 8th place in the AM class. And Francesco Cadulo was the Pacioli course car that we saw in that instant with Felix Smoggy much earlier on, as Cadulo comes into the pits once again. And that is because he's got a drive-through penalty for instant points, as so has Alan McCain. He's got that black flag against his name. That explains the story. And indeed, right now, it definitely has been one of those races where it's got wrong for so many. But those who got it right, well, goodness me, it could be one of their best performances of the season. There's no question about it. But Cheverton is leaving the pit lane. Where's that going to bring him back out? Here he comes then, and as he does, well, Andrew Pike's just gone on past. Kieran Sharp's still in the pit lane. Bobby Moss is coming on through, but he has got to slow down to serve. And Cheverton, in the end, is going to come out just ahead of Bobby Moss. So Cheverton's back in 7th place. Not bad for the man from Aztec Racing, who started 20th today. And Bobby Moss, well, he started 14th. He's up to 8th, but I think he was hoping for a bit more, but it hasn't quite clicked together. And remember, Moss is currently the highest wet runner out there, and Davenport is not too far behind him. But what you can tell as we wait for Davenport to come into our view, there he is, the Manx Racing driver. He's only got a 7/10 of a second gap over Alessandro Dalladone, and Dalladone right now is closing very quickly. Dalladone is on the slick tyre, and well, look who's right behind. That's Bart Raven. Raven has stripped 3.5 seconds out of Davenport on the previous lap, and that means that with the number of laps remaining, we've got this lap plus at least another 2 more. Something tells me Davenport is going to have to keep Raven behind him for 2 laps. That is going to be very tough going here. But again, you can look at the picture of the circuit, you can see the dry line, and you can see the wet line. And what Davenport has to do, he's got to drive on the dry line and make himself as wide as possible. It sounds counterintuitive, but it will force the slick runners to have to go to the wet line and compromise their tyres. But as Davenport makes his way through to Bot there, the car slithering around with Dalladone right behind. Well, he's got to wonder, does he let the Italian driver go, or does he give Dalladone the opportunity just to force the move? He's going to do it. So Dalladone there on the inside. Raven will get very close here at quarter exit. And well, in the end, hold up a second. That is Bart Raven going around the outside, but he slides loose. And Raven, who tried to cut his way around the outside, picked up a slowdown for driving off track and trying to make the overtake. He loses there for a brief moment, and Bart Raven falls back in the second. But that's how much this means to him as Bart chases down his first win of the season. He's looking hard for this one, and we jump back on board with the correct Racing 51 as he goes on to another lap. What will arguably be the penultimate lap of racing here today at Circuit Zolder. Into the braking zone they go. That is a car that's going a lap down. They've made the way past, but as they make the way through turn of 1, that was Valerio Tedeschi who's let them both go. And Raven right now, he's so close he could reach out and touch the lead of the AM class, but he's got to be patient here. And he's got to think about the bigger picture, which is he's in the car that's got the better tyres. He's got all the pace, and all he's got to do is pick the right place where Davenport can't force him to drive off the optimum line. But that's the hard part here as he makes way through turn number 4. You can see how close he gets on corner entry, but also he's got to be aware of the fact that the closer he gets, he will in the end pick up a little bit of spray off the car in front, and that could hurt the tyre grip. He's going to look to the inside, but notice as soon as he does, there's no grip on that inside line for Raven, and that is what Davenport's prided himself on. He can make himself brutally wide on the dry line. Over the crest they come into Butta, and Raven here will not go to the inside. He won't dare to do so, surely. He thinks about it, but then thinks otherwise. You can see the car snakes around. Raven right now is finding there's a wet patch everywhere where he needs to go, but he doesn't want to go there. As Davenport picks up a slowdown for into lava box, he's going to have to burn that. Can he burn it before they get to what is the run of turn number 8? He does it on the apex of the exit there. That's a bit cheeky. Raven in the end is made to wait there, and Davenport in the end, well, he gets rid of the slowdown penalty, but Raven right now will know the gloves are coming off in this one. It's personal now as they make the way out. He gets a good exit there. Does he get the traction? The answer is not quite. The Mercedes is able to grip up a little bit more. Here they come down towards turn number 10, and Davenport in the end goes the inside. He's going to give Raven the dry line this time with a bit of a puddle on the inside. Sliding loose down to break in, and Davenport times it right. Raven here gets under control, but Davenport right now proves to be absolutely immovable. They've got 2 more laps to go. Our leaders crossed the timeline the best part of 20 seconds ago, so therefore they'll have 1 more lap and then another. And here comes Bart Raven looking around the outside. Surely he's got to go for it this time. He's on the dry line. Davenport's there, but he's running out of room to play with as Raven goes through gravel. Raven runs wide again. Here comes Kieran Sharp trying to make it free wide with the pair of them. Sharp moves into 10th place, overall in pro. And meanwhile, Mark Davenport still hold on to the AM lead, falls to 11th place here. And Kieran Sharp will be grateful to clear that before the gloves really do come off. But right now, it is looking as though it's going to be a battle that runs all the way down to the wire for the AM win here today. And with Martin Rendell 20 seconds behind on his own wet tyres, he won't be catching this anytime soon. And for Mark Davenport, it's hold him off. Hold off Bart Raven for another 2 laps as Raven looks to the inside again, but he's just not got the confidence. Understandably so, that slick tyre is going to give him nothing out there. And as they come through the chicane, up the rise they go. The Manx Racing driver here, knowing exactly where to put the car time and time again at a Circuit Zolder that is not drying up quickly enough to give the drive tyre plenty of options. And coming through to lava box right now, all Davenport's got to do is avoid the slowdowns. He's got to avoid the mistakes. Just stay on the dry line. Keep that wet tyre in its operating window. It's contradictory. It's very hard to do, but Davenport is finding a brilliant way of doing it right now. He cannot push this tyre at all through the risk of flat spotting it even more and turn it into what is effectively a slick when all the tread blocks have been worn down. And as he comes out turn number 8 there, a bit of wheel spin, but that won't matter because the puddle on the inside of turn number 8 causes Raven to have wheel spin. And now here they come down towards the chicane. chicane. Into towards Jackie Hitbot they come. Raven looking for the move, but Davenport's still there, making Raven once again look around the outside for a move that's never going to come together. And they've got one more lap to go here. Raven inching forward. He's going to go for it around the outside this time. He's got the run, surely. What can Davenport do this time versus a BMW that's on a dry line? It's onto the brakes they go. Davenport there puts everything in it to win it, but in the end it's going to be Bart Raven who sweeps out the outside. Does he get it stopped? No, he doesn't. And Raven again. It's deja vu from the previous lap, and Davenport retakes the lead of the AM class. They've got the rest of the lap to try and settle this, but right now I think Bart Raven is getting ready to throw his teddy out the pram because nothing is working. He can't understand why. He's tried as hard as he can. Meanwhile, there's fighting going on for 8th place up the road as well as Alessandro Dalladone fight side by side. But meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, we have to come to the front of the field because Craig Tardog, he's been absolutely faultless. He picked the right tyre, he picked the right strategy, and MSA Racing get it right here at Circuit Zolder. Craig Tardog wins in the pro and overall category, head of Jack Southfield, who takes 2nd place in the Sim Racing Collective Esports from 24th to 2nd. It will then be Francesco Petalin, who makes his way onto the podium for the first time in a feature race this season in some time for Absolute Motorsport Ace Lift, ahead of Felix Moggy, who takes 4th place. It will then be Tom Davidson, who holds on by a hair's width here by the looks of things, to round off the top 5 of the Sim Racing Collective Esports, ahead of Andrew Pike as they make the way to the finish line. Davidson's happy about that one. Then it'll be Matt Sheverton, who holds on to 7th here and starting of 20th. What a result from him after a dismal qualifying session. It'll then be Alessandro Dalladone a bit further back, but we need to take a look back to what is the Davenport versus Raven battle. They're still here, ladies and gentlemen. It will be Dalladone, Sharp and Moss, but then who's going to come through here as Bobby Moss has run out of fuel. Moss has run out of fuel, and that's going to give Davenport all the right to hold on. So after 7 incredible laps of fighting, Raven's all over the back of him, but it's no good. Or is it as they drag race towards the line? Who's it going to be? It's going to be Davenport. Davenport does it for Manx Racing. My good lord, by only 3 thousandths of a second across the line. Bart Raven just misses it by the minimum of margins, and he ends up 2nd in AM class. Martin Rendell coming home for 3rd in AM, recovering the points that he lost at VIR, and then it will be Clive Bourne who comes on through to make it 4th place in AM with some grass in tow as well as he takes 13th overall. I think Bobby Moss has run out of fuel, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think he's going to make it to the finish line unless somebody pushes him. There he is. If we can get somebody to give him a little bit of a push, that would be great, because he's sat there right now with only 100 metres left and to the finish line. There you can see it slightly up a hill. That's why he can't roll it to the finish. But I don't know if anyone's got enough fuel. But otherwise, Bobby Moss will be classified as your 14th place finisher and 10th in pro either way. But that's going to be gutting for him to end the race, literally with only meters to spare. And well, as Aura tries to cool on down, my goodness, what a final few laps of the race. Indeed, my good lord, it's been absolutely crazy here at Circuit Zolder. It's been an incredible race in Belgium. And understandably, that's why they refer to this circuit as everybody's 2nd favourite circuit, because if Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps doesn't live up to expectations, Circuit Zolder will gladly deliver on them and not disappoint. And with the wet weather as well, we've had a race for seasons to come. But let's take a look back right towards the end there, the Davenport versus Raven battle. Here it was, and as we did, this was on board with Bart Raven, who thinks he's got the move, but then suddenly Bobby Moss runs out of fuel. Raven has to stamp on the brakes there, and as he made his way to the chicane, Davenport's got no tyre left to speak on those wet tyres. Raven gets the exit, but Davenport takes his time out the corner 9. That's what he's legally allowed to do. Raven's got the space, but in the end, he's just not got enough. And you can see literally by millimetres in the end, it went the way of Mark Davenport. And for Bart Raven, what an attempt, but it was not enough. And as we make our way back to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Francesco Petlin's parked sideways to the pits. I think that he's perhaps slipped in the pits. Let's take a look to those scenic views and with it the race results, subject to any Stewart inquiries. Goodness me, we're going to need a breather after this one. It's been an incredible round of racing. But as we do get the results up on screen, well, here they are. And as we can see, after an incredible 40 minutes of racing action in round 4 of 6 in the Sim Racing Collective GT4 Series Season 3, brought to you on iRacing, Circuit Zolder saw Craig Tweldock take his first win of the season overall in pro for MSA Racing with an incredible drive to victory, no doubt about it. He was ahead there of Jack Southfield by 4.5 seconds, with the Sim Racing Collective Esports driver coming all the way through the field on a set of slick tyres and plenty of fuel saving, and in the end did everything right in his Aston Martin to make the Unicorn car make its way to a maiden podium. Francesco Pettelin took third there for Absolute Motorsport Ace-Liv, and today, after the difficulties on the opening lap where it all went wrong out of Talama box corner, he opted to take it smart and sensible, and that's how he's made it onto the podium. Felix Moggi, the man who started on pole, had to settle for fourth for the end with a crack to racing dry hand. A bit of a dismal start to his race, but picked things up as things went along, and I think if he had a couple more laps, he would have been back on the podium potentially, but it wasn't to be, but he was able to be 14 seconds clear of Tom Davidson. The Sim Racing Collective Esports Trial was ahead of teammate Andrew Pike at the close by a second, and then it was Matt Sheraton in 7th from a 20th place start. Well, what an effort for the Aztec Racing driver there, making his way all the way up the order, and indeed keeping it as cool as calm as humanly possible. Alessandro Dalladone took 8th place there for the Italian job. He was 14 seconds behind, but 2 seconds ahead of the Sim Racing Collective Esports' Kieran Sharp. And they were all pro drivers, and a round of your top 10 overall was your AM winner, Mark Davenport, who started on the wet tyre, took the lead early on, and when the wet tyre fell away, he didn't give up his faith in it, and he managed to hold on for Manx Racing to take an absolutely epic win ahead of Bart Raven, who in the end, it was thousands between the two of them at the finish line, and Bart Raven could not find a way through in time. The cracked racing driver was best of the rest 11th overall and second place in the AM class. Martin Mendel there, he completed the run to third in AM, so that was your all-AM podium there, 10th through to 12th. And the privateer also sticking with the wet tyre and making it work out nicely for himself to get some good points to the board. And then we did see 4th place in AM, 13th overall, Clive Bourne there for Big Pig Racing by VRS, who was your final lead lap finisher. Unfortunately, a lack of fuel right at the end of the race for Bobby Moss meant that he had to settle on 4th to 14th, but 10 in pro, so some good points for him for the Nigel Mansell fan club, and he was the first of many drivers who were lapped down, including 5th place AM driver Craig Murphy there for Manx Racing, who was ahead of Valerio Petretti for the Italian job, and Petretti really struggling in the wet conditions here today compared to the dry conditions of VIR only a week ago. It was Mav Gardner in 17th place there for TSRC Esports, head of Valerio Tedeschi, with Tedeschi as well seemingly struggling as time went on, but he was still a lap down, whereas it was 2 laps down for Alan McCain for iRacing Esports, and the same for Paul Sims there in 20th place, and with that 8th in AM. 21st, it was Francesco Cardulo, 6 laps down there, but still classified as a finisher, and the same for Marlon Schwab for DLR FP1. And then we did have, unfortunately, our retirees of Lenny Hansen, Nick Lewins, and Luke Smith. Well, that's all your results, subject to any stewards inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. 25 starters, 22 finishers at the end, of which 13 on the lead lap. And what an absolutely incredible race to get the second half of the season underway. And the great news is, whilst the racing has come to a close, this broadcast has not, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes' time, we're going to be getting a word or two with some of our drivers who've raced today in post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. We will see you again very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for post-round interviews. And what a round of racing we've had. And we've got some bumper interviews lined up. And firstly, we're going to be kicking off from hearing from Francesco Petalin in the Pro Class at the Absolute Motorsport ACEF team as he joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Francesco. And, well, what a round of racing tonight. I mean, from starting on the front row to finishing in third, it was up, down, the battles every lap. How does it feel to finish on the podium again?
Well, hello. It feels amazing because after the first lap, I thought, it's done. I almost thought about withdrawing, but I kept racing, and it was a good idea. I think the main key was the unfortunate strategy. I mean, with the crash, I had to pit in the first few laps when everybody was going slowly for the cold tires and the very wet patch on the track, and so I've lost less time than all the others, and I gained in the pits and by having always hot tires.
Oh, goodness me. Well, having hot tyres absolutely critical as we do take a look back at the footage that saw your race go from a good start to a nightmare opening lap. Before we talk a bit more about the race, qualifying, second on the grid, 2 tenths off of pole. How did it feel out there? Because I suspect with how wet the circuit was, the car was getting quicker every lap.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that the first two laps weren't as good as the third one. So I had to push a little bit less in the first two. And in the third one, I almost did a perfect lap apart from the hairpin and from another, I think, yeah, turn one. And yeah, it felt really sketchy to drive. But we were all on wet tires, I think. So it was more simple than in the race.
Oh, indeed. And well, it may have been simple in qualifying, but the race, what made you pick the tyre you started on?
Well, I saw in the standings that almost half of the grid was going slick, and I thought that if I survived the first 5 or 6 laps, I would have gone a lot quicker with the dry tires. Even if the track wasn't hot, so it was difficult to dry it up. With the 30 cars on track, it's easy to lose all the wetness.
I see. I think a sensible call, to be fair, but unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. I mean, the opening couple of corners were epic, 3 wide through the first 2 turns, and you were battling non-stop, and then an unfortunate incident that sees you in the wall at the end of the lap.
Yeah, the first lap was so chaotic. After the first turn, I already understood that the guy with the Mercedes, I don't remember who he was, but it was pretty clear that he had the wet tires, so I didn't even fight with him. But yeah, I was trying to overtake the Mustang at the start. I think I did a really good and clean job, even if I went all on the curb. I didn't expect him to. It was Felix Smoggy, right?
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah, he braked very very late into turn one, and I was scared about it. But luckily, we all survived, even 3 wide in the wet with dry tires.
Oh, it was absolutely incredible between yourself, Felix Moggy, and Mark Davenport to go 3 wide. And as you say, battling with Felix all the way through the opening couple of corners. Obviously, the instant happened, you had to come into the pits. But after that, you started to recover through the field. I mean, did it take a bit of the pressure off of you, knowing that you'd have nobody around you for quite a bit of time, and therefore, really, you had the track to yourself, and you could just rubber in the tyre?
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot easier to push without having so many cars around me. So it was just 30 minutes qualifying with some lapped cars in between, and I didn't think I could have been so much up the the standings. And when I saw somebody pitting from 7th and he went behind me, I thought, well, that's it. I'm doing a good job, so I kept pushing and never stopped.
Oh, well, to be fair, with that attitude, you were rewarded quite nicely because as time went on, you picked up place after place. And at what point did it sort of dawn on you, perhaps, that you were going to be finishing on the podium?
I think in the last, I didn't relax at any point in the race because I also had Felix Smoghi in the last 2 or 3 laps behind me. That was, he had the same pace as me, maybe a little bit slower. So I understood that I had the opportunity of the podium in like the last 10 minutes, and it was really a nice feeling.
Oh, indeed, it sounds like I could hear it in your voice that you're happy with your drive. And with this result, you move closer to the top of the championship standings. There's very few points between yourself and Tom Davidson. So a big result, 2 rounds to go. Do you fancy your chances at becoming our pro champion?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to, and I'll try until the last corner of the last race.
Oh, I love that spirit. That's what we love to hear. And in terms of the next race, we're obviously off to the US of A once again. We head to Sonoma for the new sports car alternate layout. How are you feeling for Sonoma?
I've actually never raced there, and I bought the track like 2 or 3 days ago, and I've never tried it in any sim. So it's going to be a new track for me.
Well, a new track, a new experience, but perhaps we'll see you make your way onto the podium once again. Just before we do let you go, Francesco, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Well, I want to thank like Kieran Sharp and all the guys that organize this championship. I want to thank you to give us this great commentary, and my team as always that supports me.
Well, Francesco, we'll leave it there for now, but congratulations on a brilliant recovery drive to 3rd place. Arguably the best recovery drives of the season we've seen. We look forward to even more next time out at Sonoma and seeing what you can do there and your first experiences of the American circuit. But until then, my friend, thank you for your time this evening and have a great rest of the night.
Bye-bye.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from Francesco Petrolin, who summarised it as a very different style of evening. Qualifying, very straightforward. All about being on the wet tyre and just pumping in the laps and feeling as though he had a better lap out there to try and take that pole position off of Felix Smoghi, but in the end he couldn't quite get it together. The race, meanwhile, was a very different story with a very interesting start. Of course, Mark Davenport starting on the wet tyre, whereas Francesco and several other drivers opted to start on the slick, and it led to an absolutely incredible free wide for the first couple of corners and in plenty of battling. Unfortunately, his race didn't really go the way that the plan said it would after that big shunt at turn number 7. How he didn't give up, as he mentioned there, he thought about retiring, but in the end he decided not to, committed to it, and, well, his spirit there about not giving up until the very last lap of the final race, that's the spirit you want to hear from the Absolute Motorsport A-Swift driver, and that spirit has rewarded him with a 3rd place, that given Tom Davidson's 5th place today, moves Petin just that little bit closer to the top of the pro standings. And if he can continue to repeat this, you never know, come the season finale, we could be looking at a new pro champion in Francesco Petrolin. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more interviews to come. Stay with us because we head to the M-Class next. And as we come to the AM-Class, ladies and gentlemen, who else to start off some interviews in the AM-Class tonight other than with our race winner, as he does join me now in the interview room. It's none other than Mark Davenport. Good evening to you, Mark. And, well, I mean, we were speechless at the time when you crossed the finish line, but what was it like for you in the car? Millimetres at the finish. I mean, you probably can't believe it.
It was all very confusing. I think at the start, we were sat with a wait, watching the counter go down and just wondering whether to go dries or wets, and I went for the wets. It paid off for the first, maybe third or half of the race, and then I was watching the time come down very quickly. So, yeah, maybe at the pit stop I should have switched to dries because it was a bit close for comfort there towards the end.
Oh, goodness, man, I'll definitely say so. I mean, We'll talk a little bit about your inspired choice of tyres very shortly and some of the epicness that presumed from that. But in qualifying, a very solid performance from yourself and surprising everybody with 3rd place overall. I mean, did you expect that lap time or was it one that came out of nowhere?
I think my lap times were, I guess, consistent with what I was doing in practice. I was just surprised to see the other guys maybe not going as quick as what they had done in practice themselves. So, yeah, I think it was just maybe just fortunate. I think just maybe others just struggled for grip.
Well, if others struggle, somebody's got to do well, and it was yourself. And let's come back to the start of the race. You were saying there about trying to pick the right tyre. You went with the wet in the end, and I presume then your goal at the start of the race, as we saw, was I've got to get clear of everybody as quickly as possible, because if they're all on slicks, they're going to struggle. I'm going to be fine, but come the second half of the race, that tyre is going to fall away.
It did feel very strange being up at the front, I must say. But we just kept going, tried to keep it consistent with the lap times. But I think just towards maybe about lap 10, 12, I think we just caught my teammate Craig Murphy there, and I lost a lot of rhythm. I didn't have the pace to go past, so we left him be, and then I could see the lap times getting quicker and quicker, and the advantage I have diminishing quickly.
Oh, goodness me. Well, that advantage gradually diminishing, but at no point did you really lose whilst you lost your momentum, you didn't really lose control per se. And after the pit stop, I mean, there are 2 ways you could cut it. Bart obviously decided to go from wet to slick, but I get the feeling you thought to yourself, you know what, track position is going to be more important.
Exactly. I was in 2 minds what to do, and I just gambled and staying with the wets. I thought I've got 4 laps to maybe hang on. Went for the quicker sort of pit stop time with a splash and dash with fuel. And yeah, I think from the times, I think was it 15 thousandths of a second, I think was the difference.
Oh, indeed it was. I mean, it was absolutely marginal, Mark. But one thing we could see all the way through, I mean, it goes to show, and I will heap this praise on you, because you've shown how to defend in the wet when you're on the wet tyre and your rival's on the slick. You knew exactly where to put the car time and time again to force Bar onto the wet patches, if you will. I bet there was a small grin on your face every time he went to go for a move. It's sort of, nope, you're not coming through.
I think I was very fortunate, especially coming down to the last chicane. I think there was a back marker, maybe struggling for fuel. So I just positioned the car on the left, and that just gave him no room down the right-hand side. But he got such good drive out of the last chicane. I actually thought I'd lost it on the line.
Oh, goodness me. It was so close between the 2 of you. The closest finish we've seen in the series history today. I don't think we can get that much closer, to be fair. But what it does mean now is that with this result, after a bit of an up and down season, it's your first win, and with it, it moves you back into 3rd in the championship, level with Daniel Moffat and only 13 points behind Valerio Petretti. Is that a good feeling to know that you're still in the title hunt?
Yeah, absolutely. The last race, I didn't have a good race at all my own fault, really. And yeah, I think just a little bit heavy with the throttle, not getting used to the tyres warming up. You think there's more grip than there is, and before you know it, it spins around on you. So yeah, great feeling to get a good result here, and yeah, we'll take that on. Hopefully a bit of momentum for the next couple of races.
And speaking of the next couple of races, next up, of course, is our double header at Sonoma. 2 sprint races. What can we expect from you there?
It's not a track I'm too familiar with, so yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how that one plays out.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can do at Sonoma in a week's time. But just as we get ready to let you go, Mark, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
No, just a great race to everyone, really. It was very, very tricky out there, but well done to everyone. I think it was a little bit of skill to try and keep the car on the track in times.
Oh, 100%. But Mark, you put on an incredible show today. Pole position in class and the race win, even if it came down to thousandths. But that's what matters most, is you got there first. Well done on taking your maiden win of the season, and we will see you at Sonoma to see if you can keep that momentum going. But until then, good sir, have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Paul. Thank you.
So here and there, ladies and gents, from a very happy Mark Davenport. I get the feeling he's still got the adrenaline pumping through him from winning the race, to be honest. And talking about there, firstly, the surprise in qualifying a little bit, not at himself. He was very happy with his qualifying laps, but he felt as though his rivals dropped the ball in qualifying. And to be fair, That's one of the things that can happen in wet conditions is you sometimes get drivers who perform outliers, even though in their practice they've done very well, they become outliers compared to their rivals. That's what we got from Mark Davenport, and he talked about there the fact that constantly oscillating back and forth on the grid. Do I go with the slick? Do I go with the wet? He went for the safer option in the end of the wet tyre, knowing that it would work for the first half of the race, and he could use it to open a gap. What he didn't expect, however, was the surprise that he would be leading by such a margin, although intriguingly there, having the difficulty of coming up behind his teammate Craig Murphy and stumbling over him a little bit and losing his rhythm and therefore seeing his lead cut. However, it was not all for naught. When he came into the pits, he knew track position was key, and he held off Bart Raven all the way through to the end for victory, even if he had to rely a little bit on Bobby Moss having to run out of fuel into the final corner, and therefore closing down the lines. But it's a first win on the board, and as he said there, making up for the disappointment of VIR, and I wonder if at Sonoma, whether it's going to be another win in the bag in at least one of the races for Mark Davenport, and whether he'll put himself right towards the top of the championship standings. But ladies and gentlemen, if we're hearing from Mark Davenport, you know who we're going to be hearing from next. We'll be back very shortly in 20 seconds for another interview. And if you guessed, ladies and gentlemen, that we would be coming to Bart Raven, then you guessed correctly. How could we not speak to the man who just missed out on the win by 15 thousandths? Bart, good evening to you. I mean, I've got to feel for you because you threw everything at this race to win. It didn't quite come together. You only needed one more meter to make it happen, but still a very well-deserved second place. You must be happy with that.
Hi, good evening, man. I'm happy. It was a really fun race, but I've been in the last 10 minutes. I've been watching the replay over and over and over again, and I can count so many times I was so close, and I made a mistake and couldn't do the overtake. So I'm a bit frustrated not to win, maybe, but it was so close. Well done to Mark for sticking it out on the wets.
Oh, indeed. I mean, if it makes you feel a little bit better, you've given us some incredible entertainment and you've shown how good a racer you are and how respectful a racer you are battling with Mark. Let's dial it back a little bit to qualifying. 11th overall, 3rd in class. Mark only moments ago was saying he was a bit surprised, not at being up in 3rd place, but the fact that other AM drivers weren't with him. How did you feel your qualifying performance was?
Decent, I'd say. It could have been a few tenths faster, I think, according to practice, but it was all good, I think.
All fair play. Well, quite happy with it by the sounds of things. Nothing wrong with that. And when we went racing, we did see, I think, both yourself and Mark opt to start on the wet tyre. What made you choose the wet over the slick?
I just didn't think I could keep the car under control on the slicks. To be honest, I saw the fast guys going for it, and I thought, let's play it safe here. But after a while, I saw the guys, the lap times going down, and I thought I have to change to the slicks because this is not gonna go well.
Absolutely fair. And to be fair, I think you made the right call when you did change the tyre. You picked the crossover point. And so off the back of that, when you went to the slick, what was it like getting used to the slick tyre? Because I can imagine the first couple of laps must have been quite scary.
Absolutely awful. The first 2 laps were not good. I think I lost about 4 seconds maybe there in 2 laps. So I think that made the difference in the end, maybe. And also the small mistakes trying to overtake Mark, of course. But
well, coming on to battling with Mark, we saw you time and time again go for it. Turn number 1 seemed to be the corner where you could get alongside, but you couldn't get the car to stop in time. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And when you had the running in right at the end, if it wasn't a mistake of your own doing, there seemed to be a car running out of fuel. I bet in the end there were a few choice words underneath your racing helmet, if you will.
absolutely, yeah. I wasn't too happy with the car on the racing line there, but I mean, the guy was out of fuel, right? So, I mean, it is what it is, right? I tried to do it in the last chicane and get the better run. I did get the better run, but it just wasn't enough, I guess. So, congrats to Mark.
Oh, indeed, it wasn't quite enough. But if something to make you feel a bit positive, with this second place today, it's now your second second place this season. You move into fourth, 82 points. You're one behind both Mark Davenport and Daniel Moffat, and only a further 13 away from championship leader Valerio Petretti. It's all to play for, 2 rounds to go. Is this where you expected to be at this point in the season?
Well, I gotta say thanks to Sharpie for putting me back to the AM class after 2 races, because I mean I'm not fast enough in these cars for the pro class. I said that from the beginning, but I started the season in pro, so that's why I think I can fight for podiums and maybe even a win later on, hopefully. So.
Oh, most definitely. We would love to see you take a victory. And speaking of future rounds, Sonoma's up next. Is it a circuit you enjoy?
I'm gonna be honest here. I haven't even bought the track yet.
No.
I've never raced there, so it's gonna be a big adventure, I guess.
Oh, indeed. I get the feeling you're not going to be alone in that adventure. We've had several drivers tonight say that they've never driven a lap round Sonoma, so you're going to be in good company. But Bart, just as we get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Last time I forgot to say thank you to you for doing the commentary on these races, because I always watch them back and I enjoy them. So thank you, and it was fun again to talk with you. Thanks.
It's my pleasure, Bart, but I should be saying thank you to you for being a brilliant sport and joining me for an interview this evening. It's a pleasure to hear from you, and even if it wasn't quite the win, you've won the hearts of many, including me in the commentary booth. We'll see you at Sonoma, but until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Great evening, great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Crack to Racing's Bart Raven, and you can understand the reason he feels the way he does. And when he talks there about Bobby Moss being on the racing line and that, he mentioned there the fact it's just frustration, the fact that he would find a car that's running out of fuel there, but where else is it to go? But that shows you how much it means to him and how hard he worked today. And these races, when you're in these changeable conditions, it's split-second decisions that make the difference between victory or finishing runner-up. And we saw that here. He picked the right tyre to start the race on. He picked the right time to change the tyre from the wet to the slick. But what he didn't pick right was his places to go for the move. He kept making the same mistake into turn 1, just ran a little bit deep when he almost had it done. And as he said there, in the last 10 minutes whilst he's been waiting for interview, he's been watching all the overtake attempts over and over and seeing the mistakes he's made. And that's what's frustrated Bart Raven. But you can also tell the fact he's enjoyed himself and he's looking forward to the remaining 2 rounds. He's happy to be in the AM class and he thinks he's where he deserves to be, battling for the AM Championship rights. And at Sonoma, much like many, he's going to learn the circuit. Will he be the one to master it first and come away victorious? Well, we'll find out next round. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. Bear with us. We're heading back to the pro class. But who's it going to be? You're going to find out very shortly. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our final interviewee, and as he joins me in the interview room right now, he's definitely been one of the candidates for the most places gained in a single round. It's none other than Matt Sheraton. Good evening to you, Matt. And well, what a race from yourself. Started 20th, finished 7th. I mean, as far as races go, it's quite an impressive one. You must be proud of that.
Yeah, that was a much more pleasant evening than I thought it was going to be after those first few laps. After doing a bit of practice in the dry and then joining the lobby to find the track soaked, and then obviously realising that you're in a big 5-litre V8 muscle car in the wet, it's you wouldn't think it's a good combo, but yeah, I mean, obviously we had the bad quali, but then we just we threw the gamble and drew 21. So yeah, pretty good race this evening.
Now, off the back of that, what went wrong in qualifying then? Because we'd normally expect you to be at the back end of the top 10.
I just didn't trust the car. I didn't trust the conditions. Like I said, it's a big muscle car at heart. It's got a lot of power, a lot of torque, and trying to put that down in the wet. I mean, it wasn't on broadcast, but I went out. I think I exited the pits 3 times. I first went on wets, thought it was dry enough for slicks, went back out on the slicks, crashed, wrote the car off. Then had to come back to the pits, put the wets on, and obviously I was just behind the curve, and everyone else got their 3 laps. So I only managed to get 2. And I was sort of just, you know, creeping my way around, trying to at least get a lap in and keep it out of the wall. So, yeah, not my finest effort, but I've always said I'm a better racer than qualifier, and I think that's proved that today.
Oh, 100%. You demonstrated over the race distance that it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. Now, obviously, we've had conversations with some of our drivers, and they've given their thoughts on tyre choice at the start. Remind us, what tyre did you go with at the start and why?
We went with the slicks, and the simple reason was I had nothing to lose. I had a nosy. I let others grid up before me, had a little nosy, and it seemed a rather mixed bag. So usually I'm quite terrible in gambling for the tyres in these intermittent conditions. But I thought, I'm down in 20th. I think I'm last in pro, a mile off. I got nothing to lose. Let's try it. Hopefully it dries up. I mean, lucky enough it did in the end, but yeah, the start was a bit treacherous, but not as bad as I thought it'd be, and we sort of weaved our way around all the lap one carnage, and then just sort of tried to settle in, tried to keep the car on the track, although I didn't at one point. Whoops. Yeah, but other than that, we just sort of bided our time, and then it started drying out, and I could feel the car coming back to me and the pace coming, and then yeah, and that spoke for itself throughout the rest of the race.
Oh, 100%. And like you say, avoiding the carnage on lap number 1 was always going to be pivotal, but then you did make your way through. I mean, gradually creeping up into 7th place, had to make some moves along the way. Were there any points in the circuit in the slick time where you thought it's just impossible to make a move because you've got to drive onto a very wet patch to make it happen?
Quite a few at the start, to be fair. I mean, I think first comes to mind is chicane. That sort of three-part chicane, because I mean, even in the dry, it's sort of a single line. You've got to be fairly confident to make it 2 there. So then, in the wet, it's just not possible at all. And then I'd say coming over the little crest into the hairpin, because obviously it's one of the highest speed corner, at least on entry, and then you break into first gear really slow. So if I wasn't on the correct line, I am just going straight on, which I did. So yeah, initially it was a bit difficult. So if there's anybody behind me with wets, I was just like, I tried my best, but they just had the better of me. But I got on back though when it got dry, so that's that's all right. But yeah, at the start, pretty much just had to continue biding the time, wait for it to come to me.
All fair play to you. And like you say, really just being patient was a key part there and waiting for the tyres to be in the right zone and the track to get into a bit of an optimum situation. But with that patience, you've been rewarded with 7th place. It moves you to 5th provisionally now in the championship standings. You're essentially now the leader of the second pack of pros. We've got a top 4 that are breaking away, and then it's the fight for 5th, which you're at the head of. Do you think you can break into that top 4 before the season's done, or are you going to prioritise making sure you just finish inside the top 5?
I mean, I think anybody would like to try and sneak their way to the other boys and have a bash at them, but I think they're just another level at this point. And I think we saw it today. They're all up there in the top 5, 6, just completely miles ahead of everyone. So I do my best to just get a good result, and I've had quite a few, and I'll be honest, I'm doing better than I thought I'd ever would in this pro class. So I'm happy with that, and I just think it's a combination of keeping the nose clean, being smart about things, and then just enjoying the car. I'd have to admit, I'm completely one with this Mustang, and it's always a joy to drive in these races every Monday. So yeah, I'd like to have a go, but if I can't, I'll be happy to take the 5th. In fact, if I can have a moral victory and be the highest placed Mustang, I will take that.
Fair play. I love that, and we look forward to see you chase that aspiration. Speaking of chasing it, Sonoma's next up. Mustang's home soil. What can we expect from you there?
First of all, thank the Lord. I finally get to race Sonoma in a league. It is one of the most underrated tracks, and everyone just shoves it to the side. It's genuinely fun in anything. Touring car, GT4, 3, even the NASCARs. Yes, first of all, thank God we get to go there. And, well, in saying how confident I am, I love the track. And I've put quite a few laps in there, surprisingly. So, yeah, I love the track, and obviously I love the car. So you put those two together, and it makes an enjoyable combo. And at least for me, if I'm enjoying it, it usually comes a great result. So, yeah, looking forward to it next week.
Oh, brilliant. And we look forward to seeing you take on the test of the Californian circuit. But as we get ready to let you go, Matt, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, obviously shout out to Team Aztec Racing and associated sponsors for another good result. Shout out to anyone that may or may not be watching. I'm not too sure who is. And obviously, thank you to yourself, Paul, for putting on these fantastic broadcasts, as they're always fun to watch back after the race or the next morning.
No worries, Matt. Well, it's been a pleasure having you join me in the interview, as it always is. Congratulations on a very resilient drive to 7th place today. It's a strong showing from yourself, and we look forward to plenty more at Sonoma. But until then, we wish you a great evening ahead, and thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from our final interview of the evening, Matt Cheverton. I'm very happy with his performance today. You can hear it in his voice really coming through. And one thing I really liked there was the fact when he said that when he looks back on this season already, it's going much better than he expected. And to be up there in 5th place in the championship at this point, he never expected to be right up there with the top pro drivers, but he is. And he's looking to try and bring that gap to the top 4 down, but at the very least be the highest placed Mustang. And right now, the Aztec Racing driver is doing a brilliant job of doing so. And I reckon when he gets his dream fulfilled of racing at Sonoma next week, because it's going to be on the calendar, it stays there, we're not going to suddenly remove it. I think if he can get Sonoma locked in, we're going to see a very happy Aztec Racing 4 Mustang in the very capable hands of Matt Cheverton fly high. Not saying he's going to win necessarily, but I think he's definitely going to feel as though a win could potentially be on the cards, if not at least a podium. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close. And what a set of interviews we've had today. It's been very populous, and we need to say a big thank you to all 4 of our interviewees. Well, we had 2 from Pro and 2 from AM. First up was your Pro class driver, Francesco Petalin, the absolute motorsport ace-lift driver there, talking about the rise, fall, and rise once again from 2nd to 3rd from qualifying into the race. We then heard from Mark Davenport, your AM winner today, and an incredible strategic gamble of the wet tyres every step of the way, whereas the man who finished second to him was our second interviewee from the AM class, Bart Raven, and the cracked racing driver there, talking about the frustrations of almost having the lead and the win in the AM class on several occasions, but he couldn't quite make it stick. And then lastly, we heard from Matt Cheverton, your Pro Class Aztec Racing driver, who talked about the difficulties of qualifying and how he converted it into a solid result come the checkered flag of the race. Well done to all 4 of our interviews for their brilliant performances, and thank you for their time, and we look forward to plenty more opportunities to interview our drivers in the final 2 rounds. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Sim Racing Collective and everything about us from racing to the series we run, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you check out firstly our website, and that is none other than www.tsrc.club. And if you do go to that URL, you'll be presented with this, our website. It's straightforward and easy to use, and as you can see there, right at the heart of it is a link to our official Discord, which is the beating heart of the TSRC community. And if you want to be on the grid with us, do join the Discord. On the left hand side, you've got all of our socials from SimGrid through to Twitter or X, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. And then at the bottom, you've got all of our partners and affiliates if you want to know more about them. And at the top, you've also got our rules, news, and everything else you can look at on the website. But if you prefer not to go to our website, but perhaps instead of a bit more of a social media person, the number one place we'd recommend you go to is our official Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/TSRC_official. We can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements at the Sim Racing Collective. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our partners and affiliates, who do include, of course, Motorsport UK's esports division, SimGrid, Coach.Dave Academy, and Abruzzi Simulation and Motorsport. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, how can we follow up from an incredible round at Circuit Zolder? Well, the only way we could do so on Monday the 8th of December 2025 is make our way to a recently revamped Sonoma Raceway in the US state of California. That's right. We're going to be heading there for our penultimate round of the season, and it will be for 2 sprint races. We bring the sprint format back once again, where 15-minute race followed up by 25-minute race, and they're under the Californian sun, who will prove themselves to be the fastest, and who will be able to manage the elevation changes and the sweep and bends of Sonoma Best. Come tune in a week's time as we charge towards what will be the crescendo point of the season, with your Pro and AM championships hotly contested. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Sim Racing Collective. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember always to stay on track. Good night.